Hello, my name is Larry Grimm. I'm a professional chaplain working in hospice care, Presbyterian minister who's worked in congregational life for many years. And I am bringing this webinar to you. It's a webinar that I cherish very much, and I think it can be helpful for those of us who have parents and friends who are going through the aging process, who may be at the end of life already. And we find ourselves wondering, how do we understand what they could possibly be going through? But even more so, we have our own high levels of anxiety whenever we're close to death or involved in somebody's dying. And it's our anxiety. And how do you handle and manage your own anxiety? And I hope this seminar will give you tools that you can use to manage your own anxiety, because understanding helps to relieve the limbic system's anxiety when we are close to our parents or friends and family dying, and even to ourselves. So I offer this to you with that in mind, and thank you very much for joining with me. I'm going to adjust this camera a bit. Give me just a minute here, if you will. Using natural lighting, so the appearance on the digital camera changes as some of the sun angle changes. So let me get this. So with this in mind, that you are possibly facing a friend or family member who is dying and wanting to work with that, be present with them in a meaningful way, I want to offer this seminar. None of us, of course, knows what lies ahead in the road ahead for anybody. We are all on that journey, and we do know the journey eventually ends in death, and in passing on, passing along, passing over, however you like to phrase that. I heard somebody the other day who said, oh, he's been extended or granted an eternity leave, which I thought was kind of cute and clever. My theory is that we have feelings and emotions that keep churning over and over and over in our heads and in our hearts, and that keep us from relieving keep the anxiety level high. So I want to help you lower the anxiety level by talking about aging and dying. Growing up and growing older, elderhood is what I like to call it. It can be a most creative time of life. It is that aging stage, but it's also a stage that's full of grace. And our society doesn't say that, of course. Our social conventions are that when you hit this age over 50 or 55, you start declining, going downhill, heading out to the ocean, taking the stream down the slope. And, and that is really detrimental, I think, to our society, but it's also detrimental to individuals. And we have stages of life. We think in terms of stages. That kind of puts a cognitive framework in our minds about it. The Hindus said that there were 4 stages. You were a student, you were a producer, you were a wanderer, and then a sage. The student, of course, was learning all about life from childhood. The producer took everything that he or she learned and put it into production of a family, businesses, of society. The wanderer got to the point of saying, what's this really all about? And asking the critical questions of the existential life. The existential questions. Carl Jung said that happens for men, especially around 35, but it varies, of course. And then finally, the wanderer went out into the wilderness to contemplate these questions and contemplate him or herself, and then came back to the community as a sage, as a person of wisdom. And I like to think that the grace of aging well gives us an opportunity to have elderhood, a stage in our own lives in which we celebrate the real unique aspects of that life, of that stage of life. We are so blessed. I know many of us with so many good things and good experiences. And so aging is a ripening of ourselves, of life, in life, ripening of everything that we cherish. What's so good about aging? Well, I think you can say to your family members, congratulations. You know, you really did really well. You learned well. You accomplished wonderful things. You created something marvelous in the family and in our friendships. Celebrate with your beloved the good things they've achieved by aging, simply by aging. So what are these feelings, these emotions that often keep us anxious? Well, you may notice these in your beloved person. Grieving is something that we do constantly, really. It happens again and again. And grief, we often think of grief in terms of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of dying. And that's a kind of preparatory grief, anticipatory grief. But grief is also, it's more like an emotional laundry, I say. At the center can be denial. When an event occurs that throws us into trauma, we can deny it. We can deny that we're really affected by it, but really underneath that denial is all of these emotions that churn. And I liken it to, I like this image because I liken this experience of grief to looking at a front load washing machine that you've just put your laundry in, and it churns and churns and churns. And that's what grief feels like. You're bounced among all of these emotions: rage, jealousy, pain, sorrow, apathy. And these occur more and more as we age because we do lose things. We lose our certain capacities, we lose friends, we lose status, we lose our self-image. And we can deny its impact of these losses. But really underneath is all of this. And so you can test out with your loved one. What are you feeling? Are you feeling these kinds of grief experiences? You can listen. Do they talk about anguish and disappointment and rage? And then let that be. Let that be a part of your periodic discussions as you walk with them through this experience. I say the next thing that we do is we sort things out. Now, many of our loved ones have already sorted out their things. They've gone through their home. They've said, wow, I never knew I accumulated so much. And they've distributed their things to their loved ones or to charities. But we also, I think, sort out our stories. These books represent our stories. Have you had a loved one who keeps telling the same story over and over? I think that's part of the way of sorting out our stories. We have stories that we want to keep, stories that we haven't resolved yet, of events as yet unresolved. And we keep telling those stories as an attempt to either resolve them or to claim their power. And for instance, if I might tell you the story of having given birth, helped my wife give birth to our second daughter. I was the father who caught my daughter, and I often remind her, these are the first human hands you felt. I love that story, and I tell it again and again when I get an opportunity. And when I tell it, I experience the awe and wonder that I felt in that event here in the telling of it. And so the stories that we tell today help us remember and recall the emotion of what we experienced then. We get tired, I know, listening to other people's stories, the same story, especially over and over. We say, yeah, Dad, I've heard it before. I know. But one of the things we might do with our family members is say, as you tell that story, what are the feelings that you have? What are the emotions that it brings to mind for you from that event? And listen to those. That may help us in terms of being able to listen more effectively. We sort out our stories. We get to a certain stage in elderhood and we need to forgive. we start talking about the things that we have done or haven't done, or things that have been done, we think, to us and in our lives that we still hold some animosity about and some bad feelings about. There's a difference between forgiving and reconciling. Forgiving and reconciling. Reconciliation means to rebuild a friendship. And it requires people, two people or more, coming together to resolve the issues that have separated them. But it takes that desire on both their parts to come together. You see, now it involves forgiving, certainly, but it is not the same as forgiving, because forgiving is a process, part of the process of reconciliation. But you can forgive, and our friends and family members can forgive anyone unilaterally without having that reconciliation demanded. So it's a unilateral experience. And some people come to a point where they say, well, I was listening to one of my patients once, and she said, my father was a womanizer. He had a second life, had another one, had all kinds of women affairs with women that I knew about, and my mom knew about. And it broke her heart, broke her body too, eventually. And I said, I wonder if you've forgiven her. I'm forgiven him. And she said, oh yes, I've forgiven him. And it was clear to me that she had done that. She never got the reconciliation with him, but she did forgive him, and he died many, many years ago. So it's over the years, she has come to a point of forgiving him, and that sets her free. We may forgive friends, we may forgive enemies, we may forgive family members, and most of all, we may need and want to forgive ourselves for the things that we've done, for things we've left undone. Listen for the need to forgive in your aging friend and family member. One of the things that we do as we approach death also and get closer is we prepare by imagining what it's like on the other side of life, of the dying experience. And we do all kinds of external preparation, like living wills, POSTs, documents that determine what's going to happen to our health care in our body as we go through this elderhood stage of life. It's great to do because it relieves the burden of our family and members of having to make that decision without knowing what we want if we're not able to interact. So it's good to have that end-of-life stuff external. But there's also a preparation for how we imagine what life's going to be like on the other side of death. We have many records now of people who've clinically died and returned and have become a part of our cultural literature, life after life literature. But there are basically 4 stories about life after life throughout human history and culture. One is that we're united with loved ones. Another is that we enter into the presence of the divine. Another is that there's a bodily resurrection when our body is put back together. And the fourth is that there's a way of living on in our legacy. Now, you may have one of those that is particularly important to you that you have latched onto. There may be one that your particular religious orientation stresses and has nurtured your soul. But you can say to a loved one who's going through end-of-life issues, what's your imagination about what life will be like for you after you die? And it gives them a chance to, it helps that person to prepare by being able to tell you what they're thinking about, what they're anticipating. Of course, it's imagination. Nobody knows for sure yet till we get there, I think. The final task I think that we have to do is to let go. You know, life is a process, and our bodily processes have really a priority over our mental processes. But our bodily lives are controlled by our subconscious minds. You don't get up in the morning and say, well, I got to remember to breathe today. And think about every breath in, breath out, breath in, breath out. You don't think about how to digest your morning breakfast. You don't think about consciously blinking. All of this, your conscious mind, all of this you have delegated to your subconscious control. And that's happening in this stage of life as well. The subconscious mind is really telling the body, working with the body on, excuse me, how to move through these last years. But what it amounts to also is the conscious mind letting go and releasing and surrendering to what the subconscious mind and body are going to do. And when you know that, you can see your friends and relatives struggling to have control consciously of what's going on. And that's okay as long as it can be helpful to them. But there's a time when they do say, I'm just going to let go. I just accept this as the process. And I hear words like, I can't do anything about it. I'm really sick. I can't change it. And at that point, I'm saying, your ego is letting go of the kind of control that you wish you could have right now. That goes really, though, up to the point of dying itself, when I hear family members say, Mom just is so strong. She's just not going to let go. Just doesn't want to let go. And I don't blame her. Our conscious minds are made up of everything that we see, hear, touch, feel, sense, smell. And that has been our identity of who we are. And we don't want to let go of that. When did you decide you were going to let go of your ego and of your self-identity? Perhaps you've gone through that experience. Sometimes a job change, sometimes a divorce, sometimes a death in the family. And we say, I've got to let go. I'm not that person anymore. I don't define myself as being a husband, father, coworker, in this particular role. And that's a kind of letting go. And then when we get to the point of dying, that is letting go of everything that is defining our sense of self, our sense of ego. So, you'll see that in your family members, that they're coming to a point where they are letting go. And when they let go, then they can do this ahead of time. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did call it acceptance. And that point between depression or distancing and then letting go of all of that and moving into acceptance is what I think Elizabeth Kubler-Ross noticed. It's a kind of peace that passes understanding. It's a relief, release, and kind of a prelude to death itself and the experience of movement into something that's more fully peaceful and loving. So letting go is very important for us to do. We can practice it ahead of time, consciously, try to do that, offer to do that. And then also to be aware that our family members are involved in letting go. Well, those are the 5, what I call emotional tasks of elderhood. They really begin early in our years, maybe after 50, soon after we pass into the 50s. But they are sort of signposts along the road that you can use for your own mental framework as your family members and friends move through this journey of what I'm calling elderhood. It's a great and wonderful time of life. We grow up to it, and when we move through it with consciousness like this, and with awareness like this, I think we move through it by growing through it into a point that we are enriched and our entire life and family life is enriched. I am a coach, and I would be happy to meet individually with anybody on phone, on voicemail, on Skype, on this video conferencing, and do individual counseling one-on-one. And if you would like to have more information about that, email me, please. Larry A. Grimm, Grimm, @gmail.com. And I will certainly respond. Thank you very much, and let me know if there's any follow-up that you would like to do, either with me or in a class type setting.